Hi Facebook Live, it's Jackie Jordan with TVGuestpert and TVGuestpert Publishing on Thursday, March 5th. It's a really raining day here in Los Angeles and things are getting interesting in the world. And today we're going to talk about the C word. And we know what the C word is because everyone's talking about it. But as it relates to being a TV Guestpert and what we do here at TV Guestpert, it ties into the conversation we've been having over the last couple months about the arc of breaking news stories. And news stories all are narratives, and they all have specific rhythms in which they fall into. So this will be very interesting to watch as this plays out, and as we advocate at TV Guestpert, everybody has a voice in this continuum if they desire to participate. And of course, if you are at home and doing a choice quarantine or whatever, this is a good time to think about where your expertise fits in, get that book started. So there's a really productive use of those opportunities. But regarding breaking news stories, they all have a predictable arc. So what happens when a story breaks is usually sometimes there's a tug of war over owning the original narrative. So for the C word story that's happening in the news at this time, it's usually government officials. So you will always hear a government, when a news story first breaks, it's usually simply eyewitnesses. They're looking for the eyewitnesses who have that. When this story first broke, the C word story first broke in China, some of the eyewitnesses were the gentleman that was quarantined on the cruise ship who told his story through his social media device, and it got put out in mainstream media through the world. And there were a couple other people that shared their story right away. So on any breaking news story, it's who is the eyewitness, what is the story? But that really falls off very fast. You hear eyewitnesses, and the stories usually drop within 12 hours. And it's followed by official government statements. So if you're looking to break into the news story cycle, this is not the time to do it because we have to wait for the official government statement. So you'll find that in any simple crime scene, police report, police incident, or fires are a great way to imagine this. Like a fire will have the eyewitnesses who are at the fire, who saw the fire, who suspect what happened at the fire, and then it'll be followed by the official a person who will give the official statement. Like in a typical fire scene, it's usually like the chief of the fire department. He could do it from the scene, or it could be the captain that was on the scene gives the official statement, or it will pull back and you'll see like a press conference. You know, the police officer will stand, the chief of police will stand, and they'll do a press conference. Our official news story hit when our official statement hit when President Donald Trump gave his official statement last night. But in competing narratives, when the narratives are being fought for into where is the story going to land and lie, this was particularly interesting over the last few weeks because before President Donald Trump spoke about gave the official statement, which he would be the right authority in this particular story to do so, we listened to official statements coming from other government agencies that were affected first by the C word story. So what will happen after this, after we listen to the official statement, is there's going to be a pecking line of stories that will follow in a roundabout kind of cadence that is pretty predictable. And it usually, in this case, and in most cases, it will lead to like the investigative person or the medical professional. So the medical professionals will have a strong weigh in at this time in terms of who is giving the official story about that. Now I know we had a lot of that up front when the C word first hit because we were responding to the official statements of other governments. But now we're going to start finding a more self-contained official statement as well. And then in addition to that, we will go into other stories experts will start to follow in. And because this has such a global structure implication, it's going to be financial people, experts will start to speak about it, followed by, it's going to be insurance companies speaking into it. It's going to be very structural, financial people as the weeks go on. Now, the C word story may not be your typical, like, in a fire story, you can watch that play out over 3 days. Where this one has already been probably a good month into it, and we probably have some time to pass through it. So we may not see this, but it's a good place to either expect where the story is going to land, or it's going to be a good place to see if you're going to participate in the creating the upcoming narrative. But it will be medical professionals will be the first on deck, and then it'll be followed by financial experts, insurance companies, because everybody's going to be looking at the implication of what happens after that. After those two tiers start to clear, the next level in a breaking news story will be the psychological impact, the psychiatric impact. So what we're going to be hearing is the impact of the social distancing. If you've been listening to some of our talks and participating in our Facebook Lives, we've been talking about the media's use of trigger words. So our new trigger word to add to this media list is social distancing. And right now we're at social distancing, but when we get to this part of the conversation, we will have a conversation about safe social distancing. And when the round of psychologists and therapists and psychiatrists, or even as far down, and I mean far down the economic credential, but as life coaches start talking about it in the media, we'll be addressing the impacts of what social distancing has on our culture. And that will fill in for our pop culture folks, such as myself. It will be also social anxiety, isolation, cabin fever will be the type of headers that we're going to see under the psychological wave of this breaking news story that's yet to hit. And then when we get past that is when we open it up to a lot more narratives. It becomes more of the preventative narratives. It's where we're going to hear from our alternative, I say that tongue-in-cheek, but our non-medical health professionals will chime in at that point to give ways that we can continue to prevent it. And the distinction that I'm making in this is we're talking mostly about mainstream traditional media and not what we're seeing on social media. On social media, everybody's talking and everybody's speaking, and of course, if we're home viewing this, we're discerning for ourselves based on the experts that we choose to follow because they have something that we like. Maybe it's a credibility that we choose to follow. But that's the personal discernment. But in the mainstream media, this is usually how the breaking arc flow follows. So we'll get into the alternative health of it, and then we'll also get into maintenance stories, like how do we maintain what we learned from the C word? What does it look like? What kind of structures now do we need to go forward with it? I like this window particularly in a breaking news story and the type of advocacy that I do for my clients, because this is where solutions come in. So if you're looking to traject your voice, to traject your expression, to traject your solution into this type of problem, and let me say this is a really fancy problem here to solve, this is the window that it happens in, and it's a really fertile ground for it because people are ready to listen to solutions that might have been around for a long time. You might have been banging on the door of your solution for a good 10 years or 50 years, but this is the fertile ground where the media is ready to listen to it because we've exhausted official statements, we've exhausted medical advice, we've exhausted legal advice and economic advice, and now we're really into the people advice. Like what did we learn from this? What do we need to do going forward? What are the solutions? And a lot of experts, a lot of people will give up because the attempt is to jump into the story usually too soon. And listen, go for it. If you can get there, go for it. But it's usually at this particular place where the ground is fertile and but the story's still hanging on because it's still existing, but there's looking for solutions to offer to that. So does anybody have any questions that I can answer at this moment? If you do, certainly message it us. I will say that this is a story with a lot of dimensions that are starting to collide. So it's going to take a little bit, like a dog has got to go shake itself off. There's going to be a lot of different ways that this is going to shake out. And obviously, it's not a completed story because we're still in it, and it's having a global impact on a lot of levels for the media. But yet, I will rest assured that the story arcs stay pretty continual and predictable if you just follow the pattern. So thank you so much for joining us this week on our Facebook Live. I'm Jackie Jordan.